tell you when you're up.
Great, you're good to go.
Sounds good.
All right, I'd like to call to order the Board of Finance special meeting for Thursday, March 2nd. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Generate public comment. Seeing no one here, we can move on. We will start with the Health Department with Aaron and Tracy. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming. We look forward to you sharing with us.
Yeah, and thank you for letting us use our own template. It was a little longer than your template, so we appreciate that. Whenever you guys are ready, we can start.
Go right ahead. Floor is yours.
This is our current staff. Aaron and Ceylon, that's myself. Paul, our senior sanitarian. Sean Duffy, he's our sanitarian who's part-time. Was a new hire after I came on board. Tracy is our public health nurse. That's her. And Noreen, she's our part-time admin person. Health department, it's not only just about food and septic that everybody thinks about. This is just the environmental health programs that we actually enforce and manage, and there's 12 of them. From septic, private well, food, temporary food events, housing inspections, lead paint inspections, public pool inspections, daycare inspections, hair salon, barber salon inspections, tattoo shop inspections, environmental health complaints, and blight. We'll start with septic. These are the categories that we get involved in. Soil testing, plan review, field inspections, building permit applications with septic review. This chart tells us about what we have done in 2022. This is probably starting second week of January till December 1st or November 30th. We had 49 soil testing, 133 plan reviews, and 110 field inspections, and 298 permit application reviews. And that permit application reviews pretty much goes hand to hand with building permits. In conclusion, we are behind on issuing permits of discharge for new projects on time. I checked with my sanitarian just yesterday. We are behind 2019 by 5 years now. He was as far as going back to 2017. Since I came on board, he was able to proceed 2 more years. Now he's on 2019 permits of discharges. Okay. Many as-built needs to be reviewed ASAP to finalize projects. These are newer ones. We are not being able to conduct any sufficient amount of follow-up inspections on septic projects to ensure septic systems are being installed based on approved plans. What I mean by that is there are required inspections for septic. One would be the first one, which would be the scarification inspection, the last one being final inspection. However, between that time, there's no follow-up inspections being done afterwards. And many properties also have expired permits of discharge. This is separate than the first one because this was caused based on the city ordinance that was in place, specific septic walkover program, which is not in place anymore. So we need to start providing education to our residents specific to how to maintain septic systems and also how septic systems functions, because we see that there's a huge lack or gap on that topic. In food programs in 2022, we have total of 101 establishments, and there was 3 new pending at the time when I did this PowerPoint, which was in December. There's more that's going on now. However, food establishments are classified between class 1, 2, 3, 4. These classifications are state classifications based on the regulations, and their classifications is determined by their menu and how complex their food preparation is. And we had, so for example, class 1, by law, you're supposed to do once a year inspection, class 2 twice, class 3 3 times, class 4 4 times. That is determined by the regulations. It's not determined by
What's
us.
a class 4?
Class 4 right now, it's changed a little bit because the state of Connecticut is moving into FDA. It's actually moved as of February 17th. Class 4 is determined by immunocompromised people, meaning elderly people or preschool. Then they fall into Class 4. Okay.
Long-term care facilities,
Long-term
hospitals,
care,
things
yeah.
like that.
Okay, understand.
By just doing the numbers of how many inspections we should be doing based on the classifications, multiplying by obviously the number of establishments we have, we should be doing 261 inspections per year. In 2022, this number was 85. Just for a side note, I put temporary food events application numbers as well. We had 9 temporary food events. So when we look at the numbers for that, we are in compliance only 32.5%. And unfortunately, that's, in my opinion, is not enough. There's a huge gap that needs to be pretty much filled, and we're trying to achieve that. Okay. So conclusion, we are behind on food inspections. We are also not compliant with the Department of Public Health, which is the state requirements. And this, not being able to do a sufficient amount of inspections that is required, increases chance of public and residents getting food poisoning more often, unsanitary food establishment settings, possible foodborne illness outbreaks, number of complaints, increases workload. And our workload for food is actually increased just recently, a couple of weeks ago, because state did push the rule and regulations for FDA. That process was taking about since 2017, but I think state was under the radar for a good time, so they actually pushed it to us. They want us to move forward and start enforcing that. This was done in February 17th. So there's a big transition waiting for us as well. Private well and dry well for water softeners. They're two different. Private well is the water that you pretty much drink out of. Dry well is basically is like a leaching system or filtration system that your water softener discharge water is introduced to. We had 14 permit applications specific to private well and 7 permit applications for dry wells, totaling 21 permit application, which equals to 21 plan reviews, 21 field inspections, and 7 soil testings. In quotation, soil testings hasn't been doing is not being conducted in town of Brookfield because of workload, based on the conversations I've been having. So that is something we have to add because there's rules and regulations that we have to enforce on that. And this was put on health departments in 2015, so therefore we have to comply with it. Hair salons, barber shops, massage, nails, and tattoo shops in 2022. We total, just body care, we can combine them. There are 45 establishments in total. We were only able to inspect 30 establishments, which equals to 66% compliance. Daycare center and home daycare centers, we have 20 establishments in total. State requirements or environmental inspection requires every 2 years. That's average about 10 inspections annually. However, we're not doing any inspections in between at all in that 2 years. The way that works is basically daycares gets licensed by the state, and the state requires them to get an environmental inspection, so they're required to call the health department so that we can do inspections for them in order for them to renew their licenses. And that's done every 2 years. In that 2 years, we're not going to daycares to do inspections, and we like to go there at least once a year. So that will be one of the changes, hopefully, that we can start implementing. Public pools, we have 18 public pools, and currently only inspections being conducted is during pre-operational or during the time of pool opening. And what that means is basically clients will call us, they have their pool company out there, got them set up, looked at their water, chemical parameters, and all that required stuff. They will call us when they're ready to open, we'll do an inspection, and most of the time they pass because they're ready. However, within that season that they're open, which is about 6 to 9 months depending on the pool, there is no inspections being done. Housing complaints, we had 31 complaints, which was managed by sanitarian and director of health. I took some of them, most of them actually, all of them, since I was on board. Between September and December, there was 7 complaints. 3 were on federal roads specific to housing complaints, and 1 Stone Village. We had 1 septic system complaint that's actually still ongoing. 2 restaurant complaints at the time. And all these complaints, any complaint requires minimum 2 inspections. 1 is initial to confirm that there isn't actually a problem there, and the second inspection with the final inspection. That is the perfect world. However, complaints, we would be lucky if we actually go there twice. It's always there's multiple complaints or follow up on that complaint, which increases the workload. Lead paint inspections, we haven't had any based on the records, and recently, I might say. However, the rules are also changing for that as well. The requirements, the lead level requirements are being reduced, which creates a potential of new cases popping up. And knock on wood, hopefully we will not get any, because that is a very long process. I would say 2 inspectors, it will take about quite a amount of time, maybe a week to get it done. Because it is a thorough inspection and there's a lot of requirements that needs to be done. Those are regulated, must be done inspections. Overall numbers, when you add them up, we had 323 application reviews. These are numbers just for 2022, what we have accomplished. 170 plan reviews, total of 365 inspections completed. And we had 49 soil testings, and that's not including the soil testing that wasn't done for dry wells.
Do you have any idea how those numbers compare over the last several years? Do you know the increase or just?
I don't know,
You don't
because
know
there's
yet?
no, that's something that we're going to be working with Dan hopefully soon.
Okay.
There is no tracking system other than the viewpoint, and the only thing that viewpoint tracks for the health department, that we do reviews based on the septic permits applications that goes along with the buildings building permits.
It is what it is. Okay, thank you.
Most of these numbers are basically determined by pretty much recording of what we have
Yeah.
done ourselves. When we put all those numbers into an activity, there was 907 total activities accomplished by Brookfield Health Department. That's what we have done, which also does not include, which I put on red, it doesn't include any additional required plan reviews, follow-up inspections, meetings with applicants or residents, or day-to-day responsibilities or emergencies, such as checking your email, phone calls, meeting with clients. And most of the time, specifically in septic, food, when you do a plan review, there is probably, I would say 75%, there is more than one time or review, because it needed revision. And when a revision is needed, by our rules, we have to do a complete review again. It's just not on certain things that needed the revision on. So septic system plan review, basic and engineer plan will probably take about 2 hours. I put that because I'm sure that there will be questions that popped up, will come up with saying, well, we hired a full-time health director, now he's used to part-time, and what is he doing? So I figured that this will be helpful as to what we are, being accomplished. You guys have a copy of it. I'm not gonna go one by one, and this just continues. It's part of the job. So, did a comparison. These are real numbers actually. These are at least. Either I made phone calls to Director of Health, or I pulled the number from their websites or their financial records that's open to public. The ones with the arrow, I have, I thought they would be helpful to have some kind of reference in addition to just number of employees, what they have. And the ones with the arrows in blue, they're kind of compared to us because we have 101 food establishments. And all those numbers are somewhat comparable. Newtown's a little higher because their district, they covered 3 towns. Populations also somewhat related to, similar to Monroe and Bethel. New Fairfield is a little lower, but they're smaller than us, and they're obviously the food establishments are smaller as well. If you notice, they, for positions and number of people they have, it's pretty good compared to what we have. And the next slide will explain what we have. Our population is 17,528. I personally think that's a little higher. I mean, it's not accurate. I think it's around 20,000 populations. We have health writer, sanitarian. We have a part-time person who is 10 hours a week. He's averaging about 5 hours because he's a full-time person working in different health department. And we have Noreen, who is our admin person. I did not include Trace into that one because I just wanted, the previous slide was focused on environmental staff. Okay. And then we have 101 food establishments. Salaries, these numbers are also not made up numbers. These are either I pulled their most recent job postings or I looked into their financial records. The one that maybe not be comparable is basically Danbury because of their size. But the numbers, you know, are real. In average, we figured that it would be about $75,000 for annual salaries. So what's our goal? Our goal is basically, if you know, with the full-time of additional assistant sanitarian, it will help Brookfield Health Department to provide sufficient services to our resident applicants in a timely manner. It will increase the percentage of compliance reference to state requirements and inspections. It will increase and establish the higher standards within our environmental health program, both in septic and food, along with other environmental health programs that we want to improve and increase the standards. Overall, this will improve the quality of health by improving inspection rates, numbers, and standards. This slide specific to medical advisor. It's a little bit off, different than environmental health. I do feel that there is a need for a medical advisor, and this is pretty much a summary as to why. These are what's going on within the past 6 months. There's a few that came up just recently. It's not included in here, but COVID, monkeypox, flu, RSV, measles, Ebola, and polio. These are some of the outbreaks that actually happened within the last 6 months within our country. Ebola was...
You forgot TB.
We had cases, but it was an outbreak. These are specific outbreaks. Yeah. Ebola, we did actually in Connecticut have 5 in-risk cases appeared. 3 were in New Haven and 2 were in town of Fairfield. Current workload of our medical advisor right now, what he's helping us with, we do have a once a month meetings, specific to updates, recommendation news, specific to community health, and along with infectious diseases and what's going on. Attending meetings with state-specific infectious diseases, attending meetings with Board of Ed, specific to guidance on RSV, flu, COVID-19, or any other infectious diseases. He provides knowledge, guidance on our most recent 3 TB cases. These 3 TB cases actually happened within the last 6 months. Provides our knowledge and guidance on our new eye infection disease that came up, which caused by eye drops and artificial tears. There was 4 outbreaks in 4 states. There are multiple COVID-19 outbreaks that we come across here now and then. We did have a couple in the past 6 months, including us in senior living center and daycare setting. These were in January in 2023. There was a new case that came up. They questioned the health department. We had to provide them guidance on Coxsackie virus in a local daycare, and they needed a recommendation how they want to proceed with that case. We had multiple STD cases, and this is just continuous. We get the lab results continuously. That's just because it's part of the health department requirements. We have 13 foodborne illnesses since September 2022, 17 reportable diseases in 2023, and our medical advisor is actually signing our standing orders for vaccines currently, and he does provide clinical oversight. Reportable infectious disease. This is actually a form straight from the state. All those reportable infectious diseases are under health department supervisor requirements. I guess that's the right way to say it. state or clinical departments, they are required to send us any of the test results, any that falls within any of those categories. The importance of having the health department to our health department and to the community, specific to medical advisor. It's to be proactive versus reactive to cases and situations. It will definitely save cost to town, Brookfield, instead of hiring a private consultation based on case by case. This will definitely prevent legal cases and lawsuits in the future, protect our residents in a timely manner, provide solutions, guidance, and answers in a timely manner, to be more prepared towards newly emerging or recurring illnesses. That's just been common in the past 3 years, as we all experienced. And also provide efficient recommendations based on facts and versus referrals. We want to be self-efficient versus relying on others. That's including state. If you need guidance from state, by the time we get an answer from them, it might be too late. Surrounding towns with medical advisors. I did not want to add town of New Fairfield because their medical advisor just recently retired, and he was free of charge for his services. He was pretty much not charging the town. Newtown, they pay about $10,000 annually. Bethel pays about $5,000, and Denver Health Department pays about $15,000 a year. Our medical advisor is about $3,600 a year. Funding to relieve the burden, I thought this would be helpful too. I know we were pretty much asking money, that's the whole purpose of this. But you know, within the health department, I think there will be a return for all that too, which will help our town. Because every penny is based on taxpayers. I am one of the taxpayers, I live in Brookfield. So I think this is important. State just got a $32 million grant from CDC. 40% of that is going to be allocated to the health departments or districts. There are currently 61 health department or districts in total state. We don't know how that's going to be distributed, but I think we have a sense of fact that's going to be based on per capita, depending on town and their size. So that money is specific to workforce development, how we can improve it or support it. We don't know a number for that yet, but we should be receiving that within the next 6 months before the fall. Not only that, we had a part-time position that was allocated. That $24,000, it was about $24,000. Now we won't be needing that if we do get a full-time, so that will go back to the town as well. And also, we just recently in the process of increasing our fee schedule specific to septic and food program because it hasn't been done since 2016. And just with the fee increases, by the numbers I came across with, that's going to increase by about more than $10,000 annually. And that will be continuous as well. So I think there will be some kind of relief in return as well for these two positions. That's it. Any questions? Feel free.
I have a question. So
Sure.
we're only 32% in compliance on the health side and the food side.
Yep.
How do other towns compare? Do we know? Are they 100% in compliance? Or are they in similar situation?
It's almost impossible to do 100% because there's not enough resources within any health department and not fully funded by the state.
Yeah.
Small towns like us, we're a little bit more burdened. The reason is because we're not qualified for per capita from the state. An example would be is town of City of Danbury, they get close to $100,000 just per capita. They can use that for as they wish. And majority of the time, towns do use that for salaries. However, other towns that I have worked with, I have worked in Danbury, I have worked in Westport, Weston, I have worked in Easton, a little bit in Newton, and Bethel. In all my experiences, 100% almost impossible unless you do provide good amount of sanitarians. But there's not enough money there to provide that resources, and we understand that. But I can guarantee that all the other towns are not 32%. I was in town in City of Denver about 6 years. We were a little more than 50%, but we had more also sanitarians at the time.
And if we went to remove the part-time and went to a full-time, where do you think we'd get to from 32%?
I feel confident we can get to 75%.
Is there an industry standard?
Like, do they say you should be on a certain percent?
Nope, there isn't, because the inspection, number of inspection that needs to be done based on the classifications is basically within the rules and regulations. So technically, you're obligated to meet that 100%, but would state come in, get us in trouble for it? If you don't have 100%, no. But if you're also doing 25%, 30%, that also is not a good thing. As long as you're reasonable, as long as we have that's manageable target percentage-wise, I think state will be okay with it.
What are the general qualifications and the job description of an assistant sanitarian, and how would you measure?
We will measure based on same job responsibilities in surrounding towns. There's not much of assistant sanitarian in surrounding towns. However, based on the salary and the qualifications, but nowadays, to be honest with you, what drives whole sanitarian position nowadays is unfortunately the money.
Yeah. So I'm not familiar with just describe what a sanitarian is and does.
Sanitarian or assistant sanitarian, there's a big difference. Sanitarian, if you're looking to be certified, then you need to be registered sanitarian.
Okay.
There is a certification for that. It's not an easy certification to have. Assistant sanitarian, that person may not be certified, but we can also add a requirement, a condition, which means will be within the next year or 2 years, this person needs to be fully certified and registered sanitarian, food certified, and so forth. However, assistant sanitarian, even if they're not certified, there are things that they can do, such as housing inspections, daycare inspections, pool inspections, salon inspections, because you don't need specific license to do those.
But what do you need experience, or are you just looking for an intelligent person, or do you need actual experience, or?
Based on the salary, and I'm just being very realistic now, for $75,000 number that we came with a range of 7 to 75. It would be impossible to get somebody who's fully certified.
But experience, okay.
Anybody that we will get right now, probably based on what's going around in public health and sanitarian positions or assistant sanitarian positions, right now we're probably looking for somebody who's uncertified and needs training.
Right, but you're looking for somebody with a college degree, 3 years work experience, 3
That
years
meets the
assistant
minimum,
sanitarian?
just meets the minimum requirements.
Warm body, okay.
Yeah, and the training portions of that, I will be the person who can do that.
In the budget here, so I'm looking at the non-union wages, the 187 you guys are asking for. That includes the full-time sanitarian position.
So the first time that I submit the budget with the priority forms, I believe what I have requested was a full-time assistant sanitarian, full-time public health nurse, and medical advisor was not in there because it's not new because he's already in place currently within this budget. The public health nurse was removed for that, so we had a presentation for that, but I think that was not going to be realistic, so we decided not to move forward with that. So to answer your question, I'm assuming that 187 may include the public health sanitarian, if that is the proposal. But is that an existing budget you're talking about?
I see 187, and then I see the first select woman added 75,000, so I'm just trying to understand the pieces here. So is the 75,000...
Already including that 187? Is that what you're asking?
No. I mean, I get the 187, so I'm just trying to understand, does the 187 include the additional sanitarian, or does the 75, an additional that first select woman put back in, is that the sanitarian that we're talking about?
I don't know the answer to the best.
What page is that, right?
So, on your budget, it is... I have it, it's just an object line 51618, it's non-union wages, so basically it's 187,850 is what the department requested, and then you have an additional 75,000, which brings it up to 262,850. So I'm just trying to gather what's the 262,850, is that a sanitarian plus someone else, or is that, because there's 75,000 additional that was added on, so I'm just trying to understand that.
I would assume that the 260 would include the 75% by just thinking.
The 262, it doesn't include the 75. I'm just
Right.
wondering the differences between the 75,000 and the 45,000, because there's 45,000 up and then there's 75,000. So we went from 140 last year to 187, which is a $47,000 increase. And then the first select woman added back 75,000 to get to 262. So I'm just trying to understand what those two movements are.
So Ryan, Can you hear me? Because I can't hear you that well. The 187 is the health direct, this year is the health director and the sanitarian. I asked that everyone, when they put in an additional position or additional hours, that they do it on a next priority form so they have a place to put the justification. That's what the 75 is added. That's the new
New
position.
position, okay.
And with that new position, we could get rid of the part-time wages. Last year, in 2023, the 140 included 2 sanitarians, but the health director was down under part-time wages. Let me just look here, because Doc was part-time.
Yeah.
This is who's on first, Marcia. This is who's on first,
Yeah,
Marcia. What are the numbers in
This
this?
budget is moving all over, but I can send you the summary when we made the transfers in December, or maybe it was in September. We had the summary of who's on what base, but that's why it's not exactly comparable, just because Doc was down there in the part-time wages.
Okay, so let's break it down real simple for me.
Yeah.
The budget number that was put in, and then the first selectman added 75,000. What does that number include? Has that number got the 24,000 backed out of it? Or has that number still got that 24,000 in it?
So on the non-union wages of 262,850, it's got the health director and 2 sanitarians full-time, and the 24 has been backed out by the time you get to the first selectman's budget.
But then there's 75 added back in.
No, that's included,
No,
that's
that's
262,
included.
that's
So
262.
that's the director, the health director, and 2 full-time sanitarians, and then the part-time wages is gone
Altogether?
altogether.
Yeah.
It's taken out down here.
So it's,
right here.
okay.
Yeah, but that's not what you got shown, I don't think.
No, because I think they have an older, this is the newest one we have in front of us. So the 24 is gone, part-time wages, which you mentioned, the 24 is gone. The 75 is the additional sanitarian. Here's what they asked for, right? That's what we have in our books, right? Added 75 for the additional full-time sanitarian. That number carries across. You have your union wages. This, which is the part-time, which he took away, is gone over here. So that's gone. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think what happened is Tara went through here and did
Right.
it happened, the changes happened in the first selectwoman's budget. It didn't happen at one of the departments.
It didn't happen in the department budget, it happened in the first, yeah, it happened in the first selectwoman's budget change. It's just, it is a
So-
little
That's correct,
confusing.
But let's go back to the staffing. I'm really, gotta tell you, I'm lost. Where's
We'll go back.
the staffing levels here? What's in this department?
We have Paul, who's a full-time
Currently, we
sanitarian.
have-
Right, that's what I'm trying, you may be right, I'm just.
We have a part-timer who works how many hours a month?
We currently have myself as a full-time health director. We
Right.
have Paul, who's a sanitarian, full-time sanitarian. We have just recently hired, after I came on board, probably in October, November, a Sean Duffy, who's a sanitarian. Based on the numbers that was allocated at the time, we came up with a number of 10 hours a week, which he's not doing 10 hours a week. He's about averaging about 5 hours. We have Noreen, who is part-timer, is the admin person.
So,
Our public health nurse is not in there because our public health nurse is grant funded.
I'm okay with that.
Yep.
So, we have yourself and Paul.
Yep.
So the Sean Duffy position is the position that's going away. That's a
Correct.
24,000.
Correct.
And then you're backfilling that with a full-time
Correct.
position.
That's-
And you're keeping Noreen in that position as well.
As is, yeah. She's been there for.
So you're taking out the part-time or 10-hour a
Correct.
week and you're filling in. And that
Correct.
number, those 4 numbers would add up to the 262.
Correct.
Correct.
We had a part-timer up until May or June of last year. She left for the Housatonic district.
Makes sense. I've been following up. Thank you for your explanation.
It's
Zero it out, so.
I was lost until I got to the newer one for a second.
So, are we done with that? 'Cause
I apologize.
no, don't apologize at all.
No, I
So-
needed it to hear it
okay.
too.
Also, in the
It happens.
23 budget, this current year's, was 26,000 of seasonal sporadic wages and 68 of overtime, which was zeroed out of your budget. So what,
That,
Go ahead, Marcia.
That I think I have an error there, because I think that seasonal wages, is supposed to be, union wages for Noreen, so I've got to check that. Overtime wages, I think it's supposed to actually be, I think that's my error, I'm sorry. I think overtime wages is really, because we didn't budget anything for that, I think that's really docked. So I think I have just an error.
So they shouldn't be zero, or they should be zero? Both.
They should be in the total, but they should be moved up. So the 2023 original budget is 140 for non-union wages, 25 for union wages, which is half of Noreen, and 67 for part-time wages, which is Dodge.
Gotcha, okay.
We
All right.
had paid some overtime, and we paid that out of the FEMA money.
Gotcha.
And there was no seasonal sporadic. So the 234 total is correct. I just have it wrong in the road.
Got it.
Okay. I can't do that because of the changes. All right, so then, all right, so,
This is the last slide.
You're on your last slide?
I wanted to go on the last slide.
so if the 67,991 that is mistakenly in 51630 is moved up to 51620,
It's not much.
Yes.
how does that relate to the 24, to the 20, so you're still only taking 24 out of that 67?
Correct, because Doc is no longer, our health director is now full-time, and Doc was part-time. So the 67,991 last year was Doc, 100% of his time. And then the 24,194 is the part-timer this year. So the part-time went from, Doc went out and the new guy went in. Noreen just went up her normal union wage, and then the full-time people last year was the 2 sanitarians. This year is 1 sanitarian and Aaron, and so the total wages went up 4,313, which is just mostly a cost of living, because Aaron and I worked on this to try and make sure that it was all equal for this year. So that's how he got to the 10 hours that he's allocating to the part-timer. So that we're just reallocating the total salaries, and right now, none of them had gone up.
All right, I'm gonna ask another question. Same question, I guess. So, if 67,991 is moved up 2 rows, and you're taking 24,190, and that's currently zero, in the mistake is zeroed out, and you're taking the 24 out, so the total wage number is up 43,797. That's 67,991 minus 24,194 for that line, the part-time wages.
That's the part-time wages is down 43,797. The non-union wages are up 47,577, and the union wages are up 533 for a net of 4,313, which is 1.84%.
Do we have we been sent the correct version of this yet, rather than trying to do this on the fly?
I made the change. I've highlighted it in red. I just wanted to make sure that I don't screw it up again.
Okay.
And I will give you the new one.
Okay. Thank you.
The grant funding, is that a one-time thing or is that an annual?
At the moment, that's a good question. That was the questions that we also asked the state. They don't know the answer to that. They do have a hope that it might be reoccurring, but they can't promise that. So I don't want to say yes, no, because I'm relying. However, whatever the money we get, we will have 5 years to spend it. We will have the option to spend it in 6 months or in 1 day, or we can use it in 5 years. That will be the time spent. Based on the numbers, if you just do a simple, even average number, which is $12 million to 61 health department districts, that's about $200,000. We know they're not going to equally divide that. because I'm sure they're gonna use per capita. Bigger the city, you're gonna get bigger the slice. But I'm also not thinking that we're gonna get a chop change where it's just gonna be $5,000. I'm assuming that it will be a pretty good number. I don't know. I just can't tell you because we haven't been told how that's going to be divided. But we have an understanding that's going to be per capita because that's how they distribute the emergency preparedness grant and funding as well. So we're assuming that they're going to use the same process and procedure. So that's, there's that.
And as the health director, and you were given 30,000 from the state, where would you allocate those 30,000?
Specifically that grant?
Yep. If you
That
had
grant we
30,000.
can only use for workforce development. So that will be to increase, improve or support what we have now.
So
Support
salary-wise.
will be salaries, correct.
So would it be additional salaries, or would you backfill on the current salary if we agree to the
I
position?
think we don't know the language, how that's going to be written yet. It hasn't been given to us. But based on the communications we have been having as a health department and the state, they're trying their best to keep that as like kind of free fall, meaning that you can use it wherever your need may be. Example would be is if you had a good number of staffing, let's just say, and we wanted to increase or improve their salaries, I'm sure we'd be able to do that. Or if we were lacking staff, then we need to hire staff, then we can use it for that. I guess that would be a two comparison.
Are there possibilities, I'm stuck on the septic system thing, and you have to walk over where you're way behind on those inspections, and that's kind of like a one-off type of, I mean, that's not a restaurant inspection that's every couple times a year. Are there contractors or anything that you can hire temporarily to get caught up on that backlog, and maybe that's
That would be
something-
almost impossible. The reason why I say that is because I even offered my help to our sanitarian.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make sense. The reason to it's because those permits to discharge are written, signed off by the person who actually overseen and approved those plans. And I wouldn't be able to know what he went through and the notes and details that he would know because the fact that he was there and he was the one who did the inspections along with the plan reviews.
Then how is that handled if there's turnover and somebody leaves? I mean, that you always have to have a succession plan in place.
That is correct. To fix that is because we have already improved that because we were back since 2017, 2016. He's already caught up since I was on board to 2017. He's looking to get that done within this year.
Is that a state requirement then it has to be the same person that does the?
No, it doesn't. It would be impossible for me to sign off on something that I did not oversee.
I mean,
Because I don't know the details, meaning that an example would be is when we go out there and do an inspection with an engineer or an installer, we shoot elevations.
Mhm.
And you have to have these notes and details.
But that's not stored in an electronic system or any?
We do
sort?
not have any records that is electronically capture all this stuff. We will be working to hopefully get that going.
That probably should show up in the capital.
Unfortunately not. The only thing that's being captured data-wise is the permit applications that go hand to hand with building department, which is on
That's
Viewpoint.
all.
We are working, which I mentioned saying, when he has time, is to kind of work with the Viewpoint to get our food stuff in and possibly septic if it will work, if that software will work. That is in the communications at the moment.
Is that your last slide?
That is my last slide, sir.
All right. I gotta be honest, extremely impressive. Had a lot of data, a lot of good points, but it also brings up, what the hell have you been doing?
That's correct.
I'm like, sort of like,
There was
this
COVID.
isn't a money
COVID.
problem anymore. I don't even know if we can give money. I don't know if this is COVID or not. These numbers are
COVID.
unreal. Is this a money
Nothing was
problem or
happening
is this a
during COVID.
structure problem? Is this
You talking
a,
about salary-wise?
everything? I mean,
If you were talking about
32.5%,
salary-wise, it's kind of,
not
I would say like, a good comparison would be like lumber cost during COVID. That is pretty much very compared to St. James now. Especially if you're certified and has the RS. I can give you multiple scenarios. There are saying like Richfield, for example, they just upgraded their title to increase their salary because it wasn't meeting their pay grade for what was going on. They were paying about $90,000 for their sanitarian, but that sanitarian went to New Canyon for $110,000. And Ed Briggs, who's actually a town resident for Brookfield. He's the health director in Ridgefield. He had to increase his job title to associate director to come up with $110,000 equivalent of salary. Another example would be is city of Danbury. They're actually hiring. We just got the job thing from CIHA. They have basic responsibilities with no certification or anything like that. They're averaging around high 70s. Just recently, they increased their salaries for their current staff about $10,000 to be competitive, because when you have those certifications, since literally everybody's hiring, people move where there's money. Bethel, they're hiring now because their guy who was there for only 3 months or 6 months went to a job in Westport. Houstonic Valley, their director just left. They just recently hired someone who has no experience. They're paying $135,000 for a health director who has no certification or any experience. That is just what it is. It's the demand, and there's a lot of demand. And there's not enough people who are certified and qualified. Unfortunately, the state is a little behind. And that is the reason why they're trying so hard to get some money so they can allocate it. And actually, they're also working to come up with different options to get people certified faster. Before, there was only one university they were working with, which was Southern, for you to get your pre-class training classes. Now they're looking to expand to Yale, possibly WestCon, UConn, even expand to maybe technical high schools with plumbing degrees, specifically septic certifications or culinary certifications. So they're kind of trying to expand and also lower the requirements as well. It's just, simple explanation is it is what it is. It's out of it's something we can't control at the moment, and everybody's having a hard time.
So I'm going to ask a question. I'm actually blown away with your knowledge. I'm very impressed. This is strictly a money problem. This is not policy, procedures, where we've been, because you're throwing out 2015 dates, you're throwing out statistics that are mind-blowing to me. I got to be honest with you, we're 30% compliant, we're 20%. Is this strictly a money problem, or do we have other issues?
Right now, the way I have been doing a good assessment, as you see what's going on in the health department.
We're agreeing.
And some of the numbers that we're improving, it's because I'm not just in that, I'm actually doing inspections as well. And the biggest example I can give you is on my first week, I was trying to settle, but schools weren't done. School food inspections weren't done since 2019. They need to be inspected at least twice a year. These are just realities. I'm not BSing you. I'm just being very straightforward with you.
That's what I'm trying to say is, but I'm blown away by how did we get here.
It was lack of, the first problem, in my opinion, based on, I worked in surrounding towns, it was, for me, surprisingly, I've been living in town, Brookfield, since 2018. The fact that town of Brookfield, we were only part-time health department. I think that's where also one of the issues was. But now when you become a full-time, you're also trying to increase your standards and your expectations and your even programs that you want to offer. Because there is so much new things coming up and everything is changing. Just recently, food code changes, so we need to adapt to that. So we need time and resources for that. Septic regulations just changed. We went to training just last week. We need to adapt to that as well. And we need to create resources for that as well too. And even when you compare it to the surrounding towns, we were understaffed. It is what it is. I'm just telling you as is.
I'll tell you how it is for me. I would be honest with you, before you came in, it was a real hard no. This wasn't going to happen. I'll be bluntly honest with you.
And I'm here to take a yes. Because it's needed. Actually, I'm not saying this. I'm not saying this just so that I can sit down on my chair and just supervise people. No, because we actually need to. We need to do our thing. What we need to do.
You know what? I'm speechless. You're very
and I'm going to be
impressive.
very honest with you. Even if you offer me part-time, I will not leave this office until I get a full-time.
Well, but we could be here all night. I didn't say all night.
How about a town nurse? Keep the yeses going.
I'll be honest with you.
Aaron, I'm impressed. And I'm speaking for me. You're impressive. You hit the numbers that we like to see. You knew your numbers. You stood behind them, and you were a hard no before you came in. For me, my personal opinion.
I have supporting documents too for the numbers if you guys need it.
I'd like to see, try to find efficiencies, I think that will help you, but just find out what types of systems are being used by other towns surrounding, because paper can't be the way to go.
Right, but now you're talking about money.
It
Right.
is, but that's a long-term
But
investment.
that's
So-
a capital item that we have, sorry.
Right. No, you're,
But-
now you've got me here a little bit, so.
I'm going to give you an example.
No, hold on a minute, hold on.
I
I
like
wanna,
that
I wanna
with
work
you.
here a
Talk
little
about
bit
the
and
capital.
throw out some things. What if we gave you half the time and we said we'd invest half of it into software?
In the short term goal, I would say no.
I would agree.
Okay.
You need to get caught up.
No, I'm trying to.
In the long term, if we had that time, I would say yes. Fine, I'll work with you on that. But short term and with the needs and what we need to be at, it's
Yeah.
not realistic.
It
Yeah,
seems like you need
software's not
something.
software's not gonna help until
He's
25.
already starting
Because
to
we
work within the
already
software
we've been
have.
doing what we've been doing for decades now. So if we can actually in the short term goal, if we can increase those numbers and the standards, then I think we can work on the softwares.
Yep.
But softwares, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's very expensive. I can give you. There's a great program. It's called FileMaker for food only, but they charge just even if they email you or a phone call, $100,000 an hour.
Okay.
Wow. All right.
And FileMaker Pro, lots of towns they're using it, but it's expensive. In Denver, we were using it. We just couldn't pay enough anymore, and they just stopped using it. The IT took over and trying to enhance that system that was bought. But sometimes it's difficult because different minds,
Okay. One more spot then.
Sure.
Just for me. We give this position, can we get that grant money back into the budget and not hire an extra help to start off? And then if you, and I think you will, if you prove that this is all going right, we'll fund extra positions down the road. If you got a plan and it's solid and we can follow you, then we would do.
so if you can give me the full-time sanitarian, whatever the money we get in that page, I am flexible however we want to use it.
within the legal limits of the grant.
Sure.
I mean, if you can refund that position, or whatever, if you get $10,000, if you can give us back the $10,000 on the full-time salary, could we make that arrangement?
Like I said, whatever the grant rules and the boundaries are, if what you're saying falls within the boundaries, I'm all cool with it.
And if you've impressed, and again, I mean, you sold me totally. I mean, I gotta be honest with you. Then, if you have another need down the road and you can produce the same, if we're all
Sure.
here, I think we'd be open to a
And
listening.
my initial budget was, like I said, realistically, full-time public health nurse, you need it. Based just within the 6 months, you have no idea how many residents we help in mental and behavioral health, and also emergencies. And those things are the most time-consuming, and it's just not a one-time visit, just an inspection you do. It's actually lots of follow-ups, lots of response, lots of good cause. I
All right.
guess.
Mary, I'm gonna go around the table this way. Your thoughts here, because
Yeah, clearly, sounds like we need some more people power to get things done, get caught up.
Arlene, your
Yeah.
thoughts?
No, I think you presented the needs well, and I agree with Glenn that I think if we can see some progress and definitely work to get caught up and
Sure.
meet the needs of the department and town.
Brianna?
Yeah, no, everything was perfect. You're able to answer every question, everything that and some of it was really jaw-dropping and eye-opening at the same time too, so I'm great with it.
Ryan?
I echo Glenn. I'm very impressed. I was also a hard no here, and especially during this economic time, when you see you're adding positions, you worry, right? But you clearly showed the need. I'm also really impressed by you as a health director. My question is, and this could go to Tara. There's obviously health districts being served. He's very impressive. Why don't we start a health district and say, Bethel, come over here? And Aaron runs it, and there we go, and we spend half of the money that we could, our taxpayers' money, and we can work together with another. I mean, he's very impressive. He could run a health district, and there's a lot of towns around here that would probably want to say, hey, let's go work with Aaron.
I don't doubt that one moment, but there's not enough time in the day right now. I mean, we're still trying to get out
And it
there.
gets real complicated. I worked for a health district for 2 years. I was hired because it was a transition of them including an additional town. I'll be very transparent. It was East Town of Easton trying to join the Western Health District. Now it's the Aspetuck Health District. It depends it will work what you're saying, but sometimes it doesn't work. The biggest problem that comes across nowadays is basically the financial, who manages and how you manage that finance. Because when you, like for example, you can trust me, I might be the most honest person, you give me that money, but I have the control of it. I'm the CEO and the CFO. And you're gonna be, as a town, allocate some money, different towns gonna allocate for some money to me. But if there's a need for that town versus your town, kind of being fair, how do you manage that? Gets complicated. Sometimes it creates a conflict between the residents, between board members, finance departments, first selectmen. All those stuff I would highly recommend you taking into consideration with that before you just say, oh yeah, let's join the district.
I don't mean join it, I'm saying.
But no, or create a joint district. Yeah.
That'll come after your presentation.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, your final thoughts here?
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's things that towns like to do, and there's things that towns absolutely core have to do, and this is a core have to do. And hopefully you have a credible team that you're investing in to do that stuff, and we do, so.
Yeah, I
Give
think
him what he needs.
It's a little eye-opening to me that, if there's this backlog since 2019, and I understand the pandemic has like almost everything to do with it, but that's the first time we've heard this level of detailed backup and what the status numbers are.
Yeah.
And this is, we're in 2023.
Correct.
So,
I wasn't gonna just bluff the numbers. It is what it is.
yeah.
Brookfield is very, very lucky to have these two right here, I will tell you that much.
I'm getting all the credit, I didn't even say anything.
Well,
They
we just
help
need it. It's
people
just
on a
it's
daily
just
basis,
reality.
and there's a lot going on out there.
And I will do my best to bring more money, possibly creating different programs, which I have a couple in my mind, but that's something in a long time we can talk about.
I'm okay with walking small, in my personal opinion, that's just me. Just walk small, get it right, and then if you get it right, you build, right? And I'm good with, if you definitely say, if you get that grant money, you'll feed it back in to cover this position. It's part of it, it might only be partial, I understand.
What's the timing of the grant?
They don't know, but it's within this year. And what the person, his name is Rob at the state, and he did say within the next summer. I mean,
Bless you,
within
by
the
the
next
way,
6
over
months. I'm hoping we will get that money before summer, before August.
And can you come back with a status report at some point over
Sure.
the summer?
Yeah. I
That'd be
mean,
great.
once I get the check, I'm gonna
Yeah,
get
yeah.
it till probably March.
Okay.
I think that's the fair way, right?
Yeah, sounds great.
I mean, we haven't final deliberated, but I think you've really shown a great showing, and
Sure.
again, we're gonna get down to some hard tacks here at the end. I mean, you know what we're facing, I'm sure you heard what we're facing.
I'm fully aware of it.
But you have a plan, you seem to have a grasp on everything, and I think that's pretty amazing, I gotta be
I
honest with you.
appreciate that,
This
but
is the whole reason we ask people to come in. This is exactly
Yeah.
true.
100%.
So I thank you for your time.
No,
Do you have any
thank you.
questions of us then? You
I
know,
mean,
you
I
weren't
just would like to answer right away so I can kind of sleep right and sleep well.
You'll have an answer in
But
May.
if-
That's when you'll have your
Oh, is
answer.
that, oh, that's a good question actually. Is that how long it takes?
Yeah.
We don't decide, we just
just-
put it towards the voters, so
And
if,
it's-
and that's what's crucial about what we're doing right now, is if
Who's
we
the
go.
voters? I'm
You.
sorry.
For
You.
taxpayers.
Oh, taxpayers.
Oh, yes.
So
okay.
the problem is if we go in, well, the perceived problem, I don't,
Sure.
you can't say it always is, if you go in too high, you get voted down. So then you have to make cuts. So the goal, and from our point of view, is to put forth the budget that we feel the voters will get behind, so we're proactive in what we manage instead of
Mhm.
being reactive to a voter saying, vote no, and you gotta cut, because then you're cutting drastically.
Mhm.
So I think you made a great case, and we thank you for your time.
No, I think it's so.
Thanks for having
Thank
us
you.
so much.
Any questions? Feel free to email me. I'll do my best to answer.
Thank you so
I
much.
mean it. Anytime.
You know what I would like? Just if you did, you got a good grasp on this. If you did what you thought per capita, and I would never hold you to the number. But if you did that math and did it per capita, what you think, because you seem to have a knowledge of this, what the number would be. Rough guess, napkin. No, don't do it now.
No.
Think about
I
it.
can do it just like right now. For example, I'll give you an example. Town of Brookfield, we would never actually get a full funding for emergency preparedness grant.
Yes, absolutely.
But we will be doing that in July, and
Mhm.
we have to meet certain criteria and deliverables for that. And they allocate that money per capita, for example.
Mhm.
And that, so our population is very comparable to Bethel.
Mhm.
I know Bethel gets about $16,000, $17,000 for that grant. Just saying that. So I would assume at lowest, let's just say $15,000. But this is a lot more money than what the PHEP grant is allocated at the state. Because we're talking about $12 million. We're not
Mhm.
just talking about, less than $1 million. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I'm good. I was sold anyway. I'm just curious of the number. All right.
Like regardless what we get, I'm flexible how you guys want to move, use that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you guys. I'm just gonna sit until you.
You're free to go.
No, yeah, I'm just gonna read a little bit.
So while I'm getting this stuff up and running, I'm going to give you a warning. My slideshow, you'll probably recognize a bunch of it because for some of it, it's been status quo, so it's pretty much a copy-paste of last year with minor changes. And also, I'm obviously just using the same basic presentation, so it's not going to have as much going in depth on some of the outside things like he had, some of the numbers. I wish I had the great numbers to present to you guys. But yeah, most of it, I'm going to run through this quickly. My big thing is always, helping people day to day, it's being more interactive. Find out what the problem is, get the answers, and work back and forth. So for the most part, I'll run through this quickly, and then whatever lines you had questions on, whatever pieces you had questions on, I'd rather discuss and talk about it that way rather than just run off of a slide. So let me get that up and prove visible to the outside so Marcia can see it. All right. So let's see. My major activity since last year. It started as a project in other departments, but because it is related to technology, it falls in the IT department, is the security and camera upgrades. We went out to bid for Public Works and purchasing back in March to April. Did a site survey, walking through with them, talking through, okay, what equipment we need for the tech, what wiring and stuff would they need to do versus what I do. The install itself started in August and finished up with the final touches of installing cameras in January. The final setup now of getting the town hall, highway garage, and library cameras connected to the police department is currently still in progress. It's been an interesting project working with outside vendors that are out of state and everything. But beyond that, it goes back to the day-to-day stuff of replacing computers. I know I've had it pretty much every year for several years now in my budget. We have the $5,000 line for hardware. I've priced it out every year. If I spend $800 on a computer, it gets me 5 to 6 computers. If I spend $1,000 on a laptop, it's 4 to 5 laptops. It puts me on target for 8 years of replacement cycle, where industry-wise we want to be 3 to 5 years at most, or computers are going to start failing and dying. This past year, these numbers are pretty much from March of last year to March of this year. Replaced 9 or 10 computers. Thankfully, some of our departments who had a desire to have theirs done faster kicked in a little bit on their own budgets to help me get more equipment into the building. On those 9+ computers, we also had 9 or so new employees come in. It's not 100% overlap. For people like when Aaron came in, Dr. Sullivan's old computer was retired. Aaron got a new computer in the building. But for other ones, like Ginny retiring, Kristen taking her place in Tara's office, we kept the old computer because it's still in good enough shape. So it's not exactly a one-to-one new employee means new computer, but it's about the same number-wise for what I have just coming through for replacements on old computers dying completely versus new computers coming in for new people. And for people leaving, we haven't been exactly even with number of people coming in versus going out. And obviously we are growing. We've had the ASSOs and the new people coming in the police department side, additional officers, additional part-timers coming to the departments. So for accounts closing off, it's slightly lower than the number of accounts coming in. So we are seeing just growth in general of our support needs. The numbers in general below, though, haven't really changed too much. Here in Town Hall, we have, give or take, about 60 people with workstations in the building. In total, for computers that I maintain, it's about 130 or so workstations. It's including my servers, the public counter computers, things that are not used by a specific person. For the email accounts, including Town Hall, the police department, yourselves as board members, and several other outside pieces, we've got about 160 licensed users, about 180 accounts total, including utility accounts, like say notifications. Police department has a few systems where they need an account but not a person attached to it. Other than that, it's the basics stuff. We have a lot of stuff we have looked at. I know we have had brought up the thought of managed service providers or outside vendors. We do have several systems that are cloud hosted or supported by outside systems. I know Aaron mentioned ViewPermit, the permit system itself. They have their own support line, but we typically still try to do as much in-house as possible because sometimes it's easier to have one person come in and say, okay, here, you can go through this, I can help you change it right now, versus I'll open up a ticket, I wait 5 hours to, okay, we've received your ticket, 5 days for them to research it, and then it gets lost in the paperwork after that. For key performance indicators, this is actually an exact copy of last year. The key performance indicators for IT in general are typically number of help desk tickets responded to within 24 hours. You want to be sure that you're responding quickly, that things are getting resolved fast. Average time to complete the request, customer satisfaction rate. Customer satisfaction, the closest thing I can have is go to any department, ask them how they're happy or how not happy they are. During some of our budget seasons,
dangerous.
some of the meetings with Tara, it has typically been like we've had a person say, hey, we need more time with IT. They haven't been able to look at this computer in several months. So yes, obviously one person split across 60 plus people in the building is a little bit narrow sometimes. We don't actually have a help desk ticket system. We did have one in place a few years ago. It was something where I would send out reminders to everybody, hey, I'd rather have you email the system or go to this website and put it in. But 90% of the time, you walk by somebody in the hallways, hey, can you help me with this quickly? Or a quick phone call saying, hey, my computer's frozen, I can't get to the ticket system to put anything in anyway. So number-wise, we didn't really have anything that we could say of, this is the percentage tickets, this is the percentage handled within 24 hours. In general, when something comes up, it's typically, hey, I get a phone call. If it's something I know I can handle fast, like it's, oh yeah, can you look this up quickly for me? I'll do it as soon as I could. If it's something easy, I'll do it right then and there. If not, I have a sticky note on the back of my laptop right now of these are my tasks that were given to me today. Typically, things will get done within the next day or so, as long as it's not a low priority thing like, oh hey, when you have a chance. But there have been a few things where it's fallen behind. We've got a user or two where they've been waiting on a new computer for several months now. It's been literally staring me in the face because it's sitting across my desk waiting to be brought out. But it does mean getting the time to finish setting up, working with them in person when they have the chance to make sure that their settings and everything copy over, and verifying that everything is ready to be left alone where I don't have to go back to it a second or third or fourth time. Next down here, major hardships. Obviously, in general, everybody's been seeing it. Increased costs, licensing and services, a lot of vendors. It's the supply chain, chip shortages over the past few years. Even with some of the things that we're using, you see a company change names 5 times in 5 years because it's been new owner after new owner after new owner. Each one decides to tweak their product lineup or say, oh, this product is what you had originally, it's no longer under our support, here's our equivalent product now. A lot of prices have changed from that. And even for some of our cloud hosted things, on my sheet, I don't know if you see it on the ones that are in the paper, but for the past few years I've had little side notes, comments on it. The assessor system, for example, when we signed the contract for it a few years back, they gave us a tiered schedule. For the next 5 years, these are the prices that we're paying on it. So it's something where we've been contracted for a couple years out still of, there will be increases on this just as part of the original agreement before we get to other ones where it's, oh, we are allowing for an X% increase per year. Or unfortunately, Microsoft was one of the ones this past year. They increased their prices for all their subscription services by about 20%. They gave us a little bit of warning, but not within the budget season warning levels. Other than that, like I mentioned, replacing computers is one of my biggest things. We're on currently an 8 or so year cycle to replace devices, but it's not just the hardware itself. Software is one of the big things. In my capital request to you guys, I had requested Microsoft Office as one of our upgrades. That one, right now, we're running Office 2016 in-house. This year is the last year that they're doing security updates to it. And within the next couple of years, they're no longer going to be doing even basic you own the license permanently ideas. Everybody's moving towards the subscription model. With that, I'll go into a little bit more detail on that afterward, but I'm looking back and forth between how many can do in person, how many can we switch to subscription ahead of time rather than be forced to do it a few years down the road. Biggest problem after all that though is even if we get the money to replace these things, it still takes manpower to go around and do it on computers. A lot of it, like I said, I've got a computer staring me in the face for several months. It's when workload comes up, when something critical comes up, whether it's an FOI request, a person's computer just flatlined and doesn't want to start up. Some things take priority and other things get put in the back burner. A lot of it, it's potential risk exposures. I have had a few older computers where, it's died, we lost some files on it, we lost some progress. I encourage our people to use our network drives to share it. But even with that, this past year we actually had one of the storage drives on our network storage systems die out. Thankfully, there is redundancy in it, so we were able to get it restored and fixed. But aging hardware is always a risk of how much can we afford to hold off on. for my goals for next year, it's more or less a continuation of every year. We keep updating things as they approach end of life. I still am working on getting our multi-factor authentication to every new device coming in. A lot of that, it's easier rather than go kick a person off their computer for half the day or so to finish checking each program. As new devices come in, we set up it initially on there, so it's as little interruption to the daily workflow as possible. We had the security system come in this year, but one thing I mentioned last year that we didn't end up getting to was an implementation or upgrade of our phone system. On the budget line this year, I did mention we're looking at, it was about $430 to $450 a month of an upgrade to our phone system. It includes some features that the police department is looking for and needs for their call recording, but it also includes replacement of phones within the building. Right now, our phones themselves, some of the phones are 5, 6, 7 years old. I've been buying refurbished units off of Amazon to replace for little things here and there. The phone sitting in front of us now, actually, one of its partners downstairs died recently. Replace it for as little as possible offline. But with the new upgrade to the phone system, it's actually going to be including replacements for the phones as part of the contract. Looking at pricing, even with getting some of the cheaper ones off of Amazon, the 5-year cost of replacing all the phones in the building is covered within the actual delta that we're seeing for just the upgrade costs, without counting the new features being added in, like the paging, the call recording, the ability that we tested during COVID but weren't able to use of a person having their cell phone get their office phone line. So say for Aaron out doing inspections in the field, rather than calling somebody on his personal phone number, being able to use the office number so we're not showing public private information to the public that way. Other than that, the typical stuff. I've got the capital request for this year. One of my other lines was the $13,000 for continued upgrade of conference rooms. Right now, it's this room, downstairs in room 133. We have the ability for somebody to go to that computer, press the button, and start live streaming on YouTube as long as we've got it set up. We're still looking to expand that off so more of our rooms have technology available. And as we start looking at the possibility of Center School being used for meeting spaces, I'm sure that'll be expanding on to what other rooms we can do in other buildings as well with the Parks and Rec Department, the library, or whoever else may be hosting meetings.
Are you working on costs for those?
So for the cost on that, actually the $10,000 that have been approved for this fiscal year, I'm currently, actually it's on, I believe it's on my next screen here, past this one. But yes, I'm getting quotes for the vendor for replacing our current equipment. No, I don't mind. I'd interject with questions. If it's something you want to ask, go ahead. I'd rather be more interactive than just read off the screens, like I said. But yeah, for that one, the equipment down in room 133, I had mentioned last year when I put in the request for this fiscal year, there was some equipment that was failing. I'm actually in the process of getting quotes from vendors now for something a little bit less expensive than what I originally had in the room in order to save money there and start accelerating the process of going off to other rooms. So that if I can save some off of this year to get an extra room, and then the $13 for this year could get more rooms done past that, basically so that I wouldn't have to ask continually year after year as quickly at least, so that we can finish the project up shorter time than I was hoping for. Obviously, this screen that's up now, I did mention our hardware replacement cycle. I have the $5,000 hardware line. It gets us an 8-year replacement cycle. We'd like to get to a 3 to 5 year point. But this is one where I typically haven't been asking for it immediately because we have been managing, we've been replacing pieces as they go. There are better places I'd like to put the money. Rainy day, yes, I'd love to get this up to $10,000 a year, but it's not the top priority. And then last thing I have here, thinking outside the box, is pretty much a day-to-day occurrence. Rather than replace the whole computer, we'll replace the hard drive in it, replace the memory in it, replace just the pieces that are failing. When feasible, we've been, like I said, if a user has a laptop, during beginning COVID, we bought laptops. If their desktop's failing and the laptop's about the same specifications, we use that as our primary computer until that dies. Basically just get a little bit of life extra out of the equipment we have. Again, cost-efficient solutions. This computer sitting here recording us now, broadcasting us to YouTube, is a basic off-the-shelf, one of my users' workstations that was retired. I just added a few pieces of equipment to it, rather than buy a $3,000, $5,000 recording equipment. Downstairs, again, what was going to be a $10,000 single piece of equipment, we're looking at hopefully getting down sub $5,000 for that piece so that we can expand off to other areas. The nice bright sign that everybody sees in the lobby when they walk in now, if we went off the shelf of a commercial all-in-one signage unit, it would have been $5,000 or more. We've pieced it together from a basic LCD TV like you might have in your house and a digital signage module for less than $1,500. that's pretty much actually all I have for my slides itself. The rest of it, I figured what I submitted to you guys for budget, if I had any change from last year or anything notable, I did put a line to the side, but I figured you would have questions out of the specific lines. So, questions away.
Good, Dan, you're first on the list.
My question is more about your workday and how much of your workday, work week is spent triaging emergencies versus actually doing strategic stuff.
It's something where to actually track it, I'd have to put more time aside to track it.
Fair enough.
But, no.
As Glenn said, napkin man.
Typical day to day, it varies day to day. My biggest thing I can think of recently is, we get an email, an FOI request. They ask for, X person's messages from the past month, back and forth, to board members, not to board members. One FOI request, probably a full day's worth of researching, pull the request out, and then manually go through line by line to pull things that are not eligible for it. Then release it off to the legal counsel to make sure that they look through and make sure that I didn't miss anything. Because worst thing that could happen is if I miss something and it goes out and we have more information out there than we need to have out there. The day-to-day stuff, I typically have, like I said, I have a sticky note back by my laptop there. I typically have a list of things that I'd like to get done for the day. If we walk down to my office, I have a pile of computers retired from department, may have some salvageable parts that I could reuse in another department. I start one of those. As that's working, I get a phone call of, hey, my printer's not working, or hey, our financial system's not letting me log in right now. So it typically ends up being half of my day is pre-planned tasks, half of my day is last-minute calls of something's going on.
I have you beat, but okay.
Fair enough. It's all ideal.
Yeah.
Would be, yeah.
So you mentioned MSPs and outsourcing stuff. Does it make any sense to think about
It's been a back
for
and forth.
routine stuff even?
It's been a bit of a back and forth, and I know that's actually part of why I had the request in here. My initial request was for a full second person, because obviously the past 2 years it's been me running it myself. For the 7 years before that, it was myself and Damin, both as full-timers. For about half a year before that, she had a part-timer in place before it was realized that she needed a full-timer to help her. A managed service provider, the thought was nice, and actually it was brought up to me as a question from somebody else outside. It's something where the help desk, remote help kind of thing can work to an extent, but then there's little things, like even last night Brianna had her laptop here where it's, the internet's being stubborn. Remote help only works if they can actually access it remotely.
I agree with that.
So there's things where it's, okay, my laptop's not working, they can't remote into it to get to it, so it would mean waiting for somebody to be able to handle it on site anyway.
Yep. But stuff like the implementing the new computers and getting people on board.
It's an on-site thing for a lot of it. I mean, a new computer is a physical new device that has to be connected to the system. Onboarding employees, it's a bit of a back and forth. I mean, sometimes I have a month's worth of notice. Other times I have 2 weeks notice because somebody just resigned and we got a new person coming in.
Yep.
Other times it's, hey, we got this new person starting tomorrow. Can you get them ready? So it varies. I mean, some of it, especially if it's like in this case, say a new board member, a new commission member, if one of you resigned, somebody else came in, I may not get the notice if it's something where I'm not directly interacting with the board. So, and there is some of it where it's, if we had advance notice and everything, then yeah, somebody probably could offload it and do some of it outside. For me personally, there is an ownership thing of it. I mean, even with the thought of getting somebody in, it's like, I love the idea of having an intern or something at times, but then you think about it and it's like, would it be smart handing over administrative access, email access to every person in the building to a college student who's going to be here for a few weeks and then move off to the outside? And it's something where it's like, ideally, I'd love to be able to trust something to somebody who's part-time or using this as a stepping stone to the next thing. But the amount of control that you give people sometimes, it's something where I'd prefer to be able to keep somebody where we know we're going to have a long-term commitment, somebody that's going to learn the system and stay here to keep helping it work.
Great, thanks.
Ryan,
Yeah, so how many IT departments do we have in town?
So it's myself for the town hall. I cover the email systems for the police department as well. They have one technician there that handles a lot of their day-to-day stuff. They do the body cameras. They do the maintenance of the cars. We're remotely connecting back to the police department. They do a lot of their systems internally there. We do work together for bigger things. Like I said, I do have the email side, so there's a lot of times where we'll have to coordinate together in order to get accounts communicating with each other. On the school side, there is the director, Eric, and he has technicians at each of the schools. So I believe that's 5 people total on his staff. For that,
So he has 5 people total.
I believe it's 5 people including him. I'd have to double check with him to be sure on that one. But I know there's Eric, Kathy, Seth, and I know they've had a few people change out, so I'm sorry for anybody whose name I am not remembering. But yeah, for the most part, they have one person at each school for the day-to-day stuff. Obviously, they've got hundreds of students with Chromebooks, so each of them, it's when a Chromebook comes in, the person in the building will be doing that. Eric is their overall director. He's the one that'll deal more with the vendors, the RFPs, the quotes and things on the school side.
And when you're out of the office, do you have support here?
To an extent, I mean, this is actually something that's come up, I know, with the thought of joining departments between the two sides as well. A lot of stuff is siloed off. I don't have any access or information on student records or anything on the school side. The school people don't have access to our things. For the shared systems, like our financial suite, Eric over at the school side, he works on it for their side, so he can help with certain questions here. So say, you know, if I'm off on vacation, typically I'll be answering my emails and responding by telephone for the things I can. But if it's something like, say, oh, we're trying to print checks and they're not printing, he has the knowledge on their side, so he can help with some of it here. But when it does come to things like onboarding users or controlling the email accounts and stuff, there's not a whole lot of backup or overlap on that, no.
It almost feels to me like, and this is not a conversation for now, it just seems to me there could be some help here, right? With 4 people at the schools. I'm not saying that they're not busy, but there's priorities, and if you can spread the priorities around 5 people, there could be a lot of back and forth and help for everyone, right? I'm not looking, I mean, you obviously, you know, we see the budget in 2020, you had 2 people, now we're down to 1 person. I mean, you seem pretty stretched. I mean, it seems like this is a perfect scenario to kind of help
And
out.
it is something where on the school side, Eric has offered help for some of the projects that he can help with. Like I said, a lot of stuff, they are siloed off, their field of work, their knowledge on it. It is something where they typically have their students as their first priority, the teachers as their first priority. There is, I think 500 people staff-wise for the school total, something like that. They have a lot on their own plates. It's something where, as much as I'd like to be able to lean on outside places more for it, it gets to the point of, you know, I've got 60 people here, each of their techs has 100 people at their own school for staff, plus the students. There's not really a whole lot of space to lean on.
But even with 500 people, I mean, there's times where you might have 10 people show up out of that 500 people. You
And
might have none, and then you might have 4 people. So it's just, it's great to like have multiple people trained up and then working.
And that's where
around,
training
you know.
comes to be part of it,
Yeah.
though, too, because that does mean cross-training, that does
Yeah.
mean, again, more people having credentials and access to different systems. So again, email FOI requests, that is always one of the biggest things that comes to it. At that point, it would be, you know, for people who are not actually town hall employees, but school employees with access to the town systems. And it's something where there definitely would not be an option for reciprocation on that. It's something where, you know, only the school people should be doing the student data, the student information stuff. So it is nice to be able to think of leaning on them, but it's also, we do want to keep those silos off so that there isn't as much overlap, there isn't as much risk of information getting crossed incorrectly.
Brianna?
He answered questions and I had talked, and Dan asked the same one pretty good.
Eileen?
Yeah, I'm kind of in Ryan's, like they're trying to figure out how to find efficiencies and
Yeah.
overlaps and help each other out, because it does seem like, you know, there are certain things, you know, a printer doesn't necessarily require access to us. I mean, some of the types of things I'm sure you work on could be handled with another person or some cross collaboration. But I'm not entirely sure what the best solution is, but it just seems like an opportunity to try to find some of those
And
partnerships.
some of it does get close to the thought of like the managed service provider too, because with something like this, where it is, you know, somebody who's got their day scheduled out at Wisconsin or the high school or anything,
Yeah,
it becomes the same thought of, okay, put in a ticket, we'll get to it when we can, kind of thing.
yeah.
Whereas sometimes it's best to have somebody who can, you know, oh, it takes me 1 minute, we'll do it right now. So it's,
Yes,
yeah.
some working at a computer all day, sometimes part of the expectation is, you know, I don't necessarily get an immediate response on something. I need to understand that there is a expectation. It might take a day
Oh,
to do
thankfully
something, and I
people
need to
in the
find
building
the
are very understanding of that,
yeah,
thankfully, yes.
yeah. And so I spend the day working on something else. Yeah.
Mary?
Yeah, I think, you know, pretty much everything was answered, and again, when you think about, you know, how can we combine or make efficiencies, and then once you have the realities of, you know, how hardworking each side is, like, and what would that look like?
True, and learning new systems, like in this case, you know, the school has remote access to their systems on a different software suite than we have remote access to our systems. So it does end up being a lot of cross-training of, you know, hey, if we want to be able to support each other, it's new things to learn on both sides, extra responsibilities, extra training, and Obviously, things are always changing in the environment, so there's always going to be something new to learn, even without trying to pick up a whole new system.
Do we know of any other neighboring towns that share IT departments? I'm not sure.
I haven't, honestly, I don't have as much contact with neighboring towns as I'd
I'm just
like.
curious.
The last time I was in an actual conference for communicating and just meet and greet, it's been about 2-3 years now. From most of what I've seen, even just looking at job postings in neighboring towns, they typically do still have it separated out between their school and their actual town staff. Bigger towns, Danbury, they do have their police department and their town hall IT staff are somewhat shared. I know Danbury's always one of the biggest ones, but they're not exactly comparable to us being different size. I know you had mentioned a couple of the other towns, like looking at number of staff on each one. So Danbury's just the one top of mind I can at least point to. It's like they have their director, they have, if you look farther down their listing, it's marked as, I can't remember the exact title, but you can see there was a public safety technician, things like that. So they do still have separate staff that's assigned. So even though they're in the same department overall for budgeting purposes, they have staff that's assigned to the police department versus to the town employees. Or in their case, they do have a $500,000 line of professional services, which is typically going to be their managed service providers, their outside support systems, and things like that.
So, you had said that we're all talking about efficiencies and MSPs and all that, and you had said that you know, you've thought about it and you love to own everything and you like to, manage everything. And I agree with you on why would I give somewhat to somebody who's just going to be an intern. So if you were to get a part-time person with you being the caliber of the person that you are and the worker that you are and wanting to do everything, what would this person really be do you have a plan? What are you going to give up of your day that will make this more
The biggest
efficient?
thing really, it depends on what they come in with skill-wise. Because
Okay.
if it's somebody where, we're offering, I think my original thought had been about $65,000 for a full-timer. The request pass forward is about 33, 34 for a part-timer.
Mhm.
If what we get with that is somebody fresh out of college, it'll be working hand in hand with them, trying to bring them up to speed for what we have for our systems, and that as they learn systems, passing off more responsibility. Obviously, certain things like email access, it's something where as they prove themselves trustworthy, granting more access to systems. Typically, it would be like you mentioned, the day-to-day stuff. Like a printer is jammed. It doesn't need knowledge of our systems in general. It just needs a set of hands that can help walk through the basic troubleshooting steps. So initially, if it's a fresh out of school person, it would probably be the day-to-day help desk support. Going to departments, helping with the printer is jammed, or my email's not working, or as they get used to more systems, okay, something more specific with the financial system, like running reports or things. And again, as they learn more responsibilities added. Ideally, it would be somebody where, even though it would be director, technician, somebody who can cover my day-to-day. So if I'm off out of the area, 500 miles away for a week, somebody where I can trust that, hey, any major problem that comes up, they know how to handle it, they got my number if they need it, but hopefully I don't get phone calls all week.
Have, my company uses, so we actually have a person like yourself that's a director, and then we use this company, RFA, who's a managed service provider for when people are out of the office. And we thought about that for that, just the overflow, right? I mean, I get you want to take most of
To
the
an extent,
responsibility, but
yeah.
and I also get, because I've dealt with the managed service provider, it's tough.
Totally different.
It's totally different.
And-
It's frustrating. I mean, we need something today, we get it tomorrow. But I mean, I'm just curious if you thought about
It's something I thought about. A lot of it again falls back to what the needs are on it. If it was just day-to-day stuff like, okay, it's my printer or my email or something that's generic across the industry, then sure, it'd be no problem. But when it gets to be like each department has a specific program that they use. Like Aaron mentioned, we're looking at possibly, we have ViewPermit, other towns have, what's the name of the program you said? FileMaker. So it's like, again, when you start getting to, you need specialized knowledge in a specific program, the general thought is not every MSP is going to have knowledge on every system possible. I mean, most people, they focus on, I am a Cisco certified person or a Microsoft certified person. Getting somebody who would be on call for the random occasions, but yet know every system that we have and the intricacies of how the systems work together, it's something where we'd probably be paying a bit more of a premium for that than we would for somebody in-house part-time.
And compliance-wise, do you feel like we're in compliance with things, or you'd be able to, either with an MSP or having a part-time person, we would be more in compliance because you'd have more time to spend on being in compliance?
Honestly, it's always a goalpost that moves. I mean, obviously, as we've seen over the past few years, even just getting cybersecurity insurance,
Mhm.
they're stepping up. They want more and more in place. It's, I mean,
Would
again,
that be
since Aaron's in
something-
the room, I keep referring to him.
Would
but
that be something with like
It's-
an MSP that would, like, could you toss that over, or would there be a chunk of your day that you could say, that needs to, you guys just do this mundane stuff so I can focus? Because compliance is a big issue, ransomware is a big issue, we're a town, you see it happen all the time. And, you know, is there something that you could envision, like, just, again, we're all talking about efficiencies, we're all talking about making it work. And this is about making it work for you and everyone in the town.
And yeah, I mean,
That's good.
having extra support, obviously, again, it's something where you can never get to 100% because as soon as you do, there's always a new goal to
Yeah.
meet. But yeah, having an extra person, the extra time to work on it, and one of the biggest things I was looking at, like pulling my reports together, getting ready for this, is our cybersecurity side of stuff. We use KnowBe4 as a security training. I know each of you have probably had dealt with that in your outside stuff. I haven't had the time to actually sit through, walk through what classes are available and send out a new training for just over under 2 years now. It was the when we started working on Duo, I sent out a few quick videos on multi-factor authentication. Right now, most of what we're getting out of that system is monthly phishing emails to test, and thankfully, out of the 6 of you, none of you have failed a test in the past year. So thank you for that. But on the downside, I am also sad to see that a lot of people, like, we have a fish alert button in the system. If you're using the default mail app on Android or iPhone, it doesn't show up. So it only shows up if you're using the website or the Outlook
Right.
app. But I
That
have
was
not
where
seen
I
as many
was-
people using the fish alert button as I'd like to see.
That's why I always
So-
got caught, because it was on my phone. When I called Dan, I'd be like, I didn't do it. He'd be like, but you did.
Yeah, so ideally, like one of the first projects I know is, I mean, if I had the time to set aside like an hour a day to work on stuff, running through right now, there's a lot of systems where it's like user lists in different systems are not connected
Okay.
because we have, say, KnowBe4, we have Town Hall, we have the library, we had the WPCA using it as well before they moved off to using Future Subnets as their own provider for their security and other options. It's a few hours a day set aside. I would start review that list, go through, sit through their shop, look through at some classes, and start scheduling quarterly classes so we actually have more training going through again. Dual multi-factor authentication or the Microsoft Authenticator, depending on what the needs are, going through that. Right now, like I mentioned, I've been applying it. It's applied to our minimum requirements for cybersecurity assurance of anybody who's accessing remotely. Like when Marcia's got her files pulled up remotely, she had to use Duo to log into the town network. I've got it assigned to the people who need it the most, who are accessing outside. The eventual plan would be go to each computer, install it on each computer, so any user, if it's not recognizing, or say if somebody took the computer outside the building, that each computer would now have it in place. But it is something where, like I said, it's touching each computer, so it would be, you know, if I had an extra hour a day, maybe one computer a day kind of thing to get caught up over the next year or so.
Okay.
What are the credentials or degrees required for
So,
both
This
part-timer and?
is where it varies a lot, and actually, you know what? Let me see if I can just pull it up here. It really depends on what you're looking for out of it. I mean, personally, for myself, my degree was from back in 2007 from UConn for computer science. So a lot has changed in the past 15 years now. God.
Yes,
Uh,
it has.
So a lot of it is, I mean, the basic information, even just having a good working knowledge of computers. From what I learned at UConn, it did not include any system that we use. It included the basic stuff. I mean, plus I was more on the programming side, so it was more about systems and languages than individual software. So looking at a new person, like I said, even fresh out of college, like if we were able to grab a Westcon grad, I know they'd come in with a good technical knowledge of workings of computers, but there would still be that onboarding learning period of, okay, you know, we use the Munis Financial Suite for this. That's a system where it's pretty specific to municipalities. It's something where most people would not have any working knowledge with it unless they've already worked in another town specifically that used it. For our town website, again, it's like the idea of website design, maybe something that you learn in school, but the workings of individual systems. You get 50 different website providers out there with 50 different backgrounds and systems behind it. So for a new person coming in, it would be almost a blank slate. I mean, ideally, yes, certifications are a good thing to have on paper, but most of the knowledge that people end up getting working in here, it's going to be working knowledge as you go.
Would you be worried about trying to get a part-timer with degrees and credentials at this rate?
Honestly, At the rate that we're looking at, it's a back and forth. And actually, you know what, let me pull up on the screen here. Oh, no, do not leave the meeting, just pull the screen down. I have looked around recently just at other towns in the area, or even just the state itself. I think I have it saved in here so I can show you. Newtown School District, because again, you had mentioned like do the school districts and towns share their people. And my folder is empty, so I'm not seeing it on the screen. Newtown School District in the past couple months, I think it had been posted back in November, had 2 different positions open. For IT technician was about $65,000 full-time to $75,000 range, which is why I put 65 as the original request for a full-timer. They also had a network administrator position, which would basically be a little bit more in-depth, doing more of like the hardware side of things rather than just the user support. That one ranged from, I think, the $75,000 to $90,000 range. A similar one for the state IT department. They were looking at, for again, a level 2 technician, so a little bit more in depth. They were looking at around the $105,000 to $130,000 range. You know, I'm gonna grab my laptop because I have it saved here. There was one last one I was looking at for things in the area, and of course now it's gonna make me use my Duo Authenticator again. But it does vary. For somebody with those ones, they were asking for somebody with a 4-year degree. Not necessarily, but ideally with certifications from, like for the network administrator, they would be looking for certifications from Cisco or from one of the actual major hardware companies. For the 34 or so that we're 33 to 34 that we're putting in for a part-timer, I mean, it meets the minimum requirements that we've seen from other towns for a basic, you know, with a degree, not necessarily with a lot of certifications coming in. So as a part-timer coming in, I'd be expecting, if we advertise for that, we probably would be more likely to get a fresh out of college person than somebody who's had a history or of, you know, 5 to 7 years of already working in a municipality. Of course that timed out, so I'm not going to pull that up very quickly.
Okay.
Any other questions while I'm trying to pull this up?
All right. What is the age of the computers that we're dealing with? We're chasing a dragon. So what are the ages of the computers on the bell curve that we're looking at? Do we have a lot of old computers and we're chasing the dragon, or do we front-loaded with relatively new computers?
Just from the numbers I had on the screen, we had about 130 computers total on running. At most, I've been replacing 8 to 9 or 10 this year because I was thankful to get the supplies from other departments. So we're looking at about 10% of our stuff is new. When we're buying new stuff, we are focused on being budget friendly. So even though they are physically new manufactured, they may not be the top of the line things. So we're looking at, you know, the processor may be a generation or 2 older. It's something where it's not a huge concern because it's day-to-day business work, not doing web design or, you know, heavy graphics or anything like that.
What are the ages of our computers and where are we at the cycle? Do we have 80 that are nearing the end of the cycle and we're repairing the hell out of them, or do we have 20 near the end of the cycle? What do we have near the end of the cycle?
It's actually a relatively even distribution across. So we're looking at, out of my oldest computer being, I think, about 12 years old in the building, out of an 8-year cycle, so we're seeing much fewer on the 12-year point. I've been here now for about 9 years, and I can think of at least 10 computers offhand that I've never even replaced yet at all. So we're looking at about 10% of the stuff is at least 9 years old.
On your workload day, is more of your work spent on computers 6 years or older, or are they spent on 1 through 6?
It's actually a back and forth. I mean, thankfully, like I said, we've got a pretty even spread of ages. Obviously, our newest stuff right now, we've been trying to get about 10% a year if I'm lucky on it. So the spread of it, thankfully, I have had a few where we had, say, in the tax office, we did have a computer that just wouldn't boot up one day. So yeah, one day, which ends up being 2 or 3 days after getting the new one in place, copying files over. A few days of one computer that's old. Most of the time, though, it ends up being, you know, hey, it's an email problem or a software level problem where it doesn't matter what age the system is. So it ends up being a pretty even spread I'd like to say 50-50 of, you know, whether it's dealing with an old computer that's aging versus dealing with a problem that doesn't care what the age of the computer is.
So what you're saying is if we said we're going to buy 50 new computers, listening to crossovers, and we were to ask the Board of Ed for summertime help when they're not in school, and we got an influx of new computers, and we got help from the Board of Ed side to install those computers, would we get ahead of a curve that would free up your time?
We would eliminate a lot of risk of computers failing when we're not expecting it and downtime in departments. But for day-to-day workload, since it's really not the biggest thing that's happening, it'll definitely get us ahead of the curve, so we don't have to worry as much about failures coming up. But it's not going to eliminate the problems that come up day-to-day of, a program specifically is freezing or the system isn't working. So, I mean, it would get me more in line with where I'd like to be on a replacement schedule, but it's not going to be a huge change in the day-to-day workload.
Okay, so then the reverse of that, you fund a part-time person out of college, you pay them $38,000, you spend a lot of time hand-walking them through things, because that's what I got out of this conversation. You're gonna fall farther behind in your process, and by the time you get that person up to speed, they're gonna be applying to a job down the street for more money, and we're gonna be back in this virtual circle of not getting anywhere.
That's been one of my biggest hesitations with the fact that we lost the second full-time that we had originally.
So we're catching a falling knife. That's what I'm saying. We gotta find a solution that's, I haven't heard a solution yet, I guess, in my heart here of,
Sounds like a full-time person. I mean, I'm just.
But if you're gonna go
Well, honestly, full-time or part-time, the biggest thing is advertising and getting somebody that we'll be able to retain, not somebody who is going to go
And
off to a better job in 2 years or so.
Right, and I can tell you my limited amount of knowledge, 65 is about as entry level as it gets in the IT world. So, I mean, it's still gonna happen. It's the same thing as gonna, you're still gonna be fighting with holding hands, and the certifications don't really matter as much as they do, because you're not IBM, we're not working in a big, we're just, they're not gonna know any of these town computers, just like they don't know back-end things. It's tough, it's not.
But why did the full-timer not get built back in 2020?
It was a budget season where we have to make as many cuts as possible.
The
I
COVID,
believe
right.
the money was seen as, hey, this is somebody where we are handling it now, we can handle it at the time, and it wasn't really thought that we would fall behind. It was something where, yes, it was cut. I asked for, why is it cut? We know it'll be harder to add it back in the future, but it was seen as a necessary cost saving at the time.
I don't even know what to ask anymore.
Nope.
Yeah, I know.
I can tell you we appreciate everything you do, absolutely. I think this is a bigger problem, I think that needs more time from my point of view. Instead of throwing in a part-timer and trying to struggle through it, I think we need you to, and I said it in an earlier thing, that like Newtown had 5 people, and Newtown had a lot more in other towns when I studied. I think we gotta come up with a solution instead of a Band-Aid, otherwise we're still chasing everything. And that's what I'm saying, how do we get a replacement program in place? If we gave you $20,000 more, if we had excess revenue at the end of this year, say we get through the budget, and I know Tara was looking at salt, savings, and we had some kind of savings, and we went out and invested in equipment, invested in stuff to help you get ahead of the repair curve and understand what's going on, then let's get a program together to support in more ways. I mean, I think if we go 30, when I listened, and I did listen to every word you said, is if we get someone, you gotta take a lot of time to hand walk them through things, we're getting new.
That's in every
It
situation. I'm
is,
experiencing it right
Tara,
now.
it absolutely is, but it gets us farther behind the 8 ball, and then again, if we lose that person, we're farther behind. We need a permanent solution.
But the other,
We can't
I
Band-Aids.
mean, everybody's
I
talking about a
love a
part-time
full-timer.
person being somebody who's gonna gain experience and leave, but that's not always the case. You have a
It's
lot
not.
of
No.
parents in town that a part-time
Right.
job might actually be a good fit for them, so you may not
agree.
have retention issues.
But I also think we have to touch on these, everybody kept repeating efficiency.
Yeah.
So I think you can figure out all of this
Right.
and figure out an efficient way to meet his goals, staffing requirements, and getting stuff and trying to round that corner that you just cannot get around right now.
And
So that's what I'm thinking.
and talking about efficiency, so you had mentioned the FOI requests.
Yes.
How much of your day, or how much of your week is spent on FOIs?
Thankfully, it's something where it hasn't been a huge issue. I think in the past 6 months, we've had maybe 4 FOI requests that revolved around pulling email information. And for FOI requests in general, it's basically whatever department is the custodian of the data is the department that gets involved. So if it's something where it's looking for meeting records, it's typically not me. It would be the town clerk's office as a custodian of records. So thankfully, I think in total for FOI requests over the past 6 months, it's probably been 4 or 5 days combined of work spread over the course of those 6 months. So yeah,
I mean,
it's something
still
to be
a decent-
concerned with,
still
but
a
it's something
decent
where it's,
amount.
yeah.
I would just question whether you're the appropriate person to pull emails. I mean, anybody can go to an archive and pull emails, and, you know, there could be someone in the town hall that can help with that and free your time up, right? There's gotta be somebody.
At
talking
that
about
point, it goes back to
efficiencies
the ownership of the data. Basically, in order to be able to pull email for an FOI request, they'd have access to every employee's
Or
mailbox.
maybe it's a department
At
head.
that point, it's,
here. It
yeah.
could be a department head, it
Yeah,
could be.
maybe it's a department head.
It could
doing
be
that for
someone,
mine,
right?
yeah.
In their spare time?
We can't have, you know, we can't have, I think the problem here is we're so worried about sharing data with people, we have no efficiency anywhere here. I think that's the problem. And I
A
think
lot of
that's-
it is very sensitive. There's attorney-client privilege and other considerations.
Yeah,
and-
but I mean.
Which is why the last step of it is that we pass it off to legal counsel to make sure that there's nothing else there.
Exactly. We have that thing.
But then also we look at legal counsel and we're paying, I don't even want to think of like the hourly rate that they would be if they were on contract. So it's again, it's when you're looking at having any person do it, it's you look what is the hourly rate going to be for it again too.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
good, thank you.
Thank
Yeah, thanks as always,
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Always.
thank you so much.
The meeting is still on. If you have
Yeah.
anything for Marcia, she'll be able to present this
Marcia.
week.
Yeah, we're gonna go to revenue now, so thank you. If you wanna stay, you can stay.
Oh, I'm stuck here until the end of the meeting anyway.
We're not gonna be much longer. Marcia, while we're still here, and since we're all here, let's pull up the revenue again, please.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcia?
Great job.
Can you see it?
Oh,
Now,
no.
1 second. I do see it on my side. I'm not seeing it on this computer yet. Zoom, 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 and full screen. Now they should be able to see it.
all right, walk us through this, Marcia, because you walked us through it last night. We had a lot of information last night. What the gist of it I got is, we have that 250,000 in the excess revenue, you know, the extra revenue, the other revenue. But on your other points, you seem to be a shade under everything. You seem to be a little bit conservative on all the other revenue points, correct?
I don't think it's conservative. I think it's realistic with so like these are under because our taxes outstanding are so much lower, as shown in the graph last night. Building permits, we calculate it the same way every year, with the average of the small ones and then any known big ones, and there weren't any. Intergovernmental is what the state gave us. The town clerk is the lower of the 5-year average or what we're projecting for this year, because some are taking a big hit this year. The other ones are all pretty small. I think that the significant ones to look at would be interest income, that make sure that you like what I have there. The other ones would be this one, the use of premiums. The way I calculated this was essentially to be similar to the increase in the debt.
Yeah.
So the debt service went up $1,450,000. So this went up $1,450,000. The only other thing, and then I divided it just one to show that, because I got a lot of people telling me, well, why don't we use fund balance? But we are using fund balance, but we talk about it as in the components of fund balance because they have different expiration dates. So in last year where we had it as one number, that's why it's divided up. The only other thing that's different here is this year we had money in there for the sewer assessment, and that Steve was doing that, and then it fell onto me, and I had to do it for September. I was going to do it in advance, do the assessments in advance, and my fantasy world. And I didn't get to it. It was, I had to have it for September. We're closing the books, we're having the audit. So we'll be doing that this spring with the Board of Selectmen. And that's how we had that big assessment this year that we didn't need to pay for Canterbury Lake Road. That's how we covered our fuel and things. But next year, that I put it in, and I've talked to both Arcadis and Paul Checo, and about how would we get that money out, and they said, well, just bill us for it. There's $300,000 in the fund, in the school fund, to help pay for that. And I talked a little bit with the bond attorney on the best structure of that, and we thought that it's probably going to be best to take the $300 from the school building, put it in the water fund, and then allocate it over a little bit at a time. That we're not going to get any savings by paying it down, because we have to pay the interest anyway, because we're paying the interest on the debt, so you can't pay off the interest early. So we'll just put it in there, and so this is equal to the updated bond estimate, assessment estimate. So those are the parts that I think are most significant. And then the other part is the interest, and we talked about it right at the end of the meeting last night. The original budget, the interest is about $1,200 higher than what we had this year, and we're worried that it's a one-time revenue. So if you look at the expenditures for the original expenditures for capital non-recurring, that was higher. That we talked about a number of 2.5 million when we talked, I think it was in January. And when we were in the capital committee, they said, okay, well, let's make that a little higher, and we would cover it with one-time revenues. And so you can see this is about 1,200 higher than what we had anticipated. And so in that scenario, the original scenario, this was higher, and that one-time expenditure for capital being higher, and that would be funded with this revenue. And then you can see that got diluted as we went through. So to Dan's point, yes, that's a concern, that now we're using that interest income as operating revenue.
John, you're here. What's next
Does that
year?
make sense?
You're here. I'm gonna ask John a question. You're here. What are you looking at next year's interest?
I mean, we're assuming 4%.
No, not in this budget, the following year. I apologize.
I could see rates going up over 5 and then coming back down.
But the amount of money we'll have in the account
no cash, yeah.
versus what cash are we gonna have carrying through? And if you had to say, because going, not this year, not this budget we're talking about, the next year following the budget, if you had to say what the revenue was, what would you say? Well, how much cash would we have left on the basic? What is our, without having these influxes of cash, what kind of cash do we
On the
have?
spot.
I did, and I apologize. You're so on the spot. You're out of the blue on the spot.
That's all right.
No, if you don't,
And John
Not
asked
mad,
me
John.
for some data this afternoon, and I didn't get it to him yet.
never mind it.
You
John,
would've had that
John,
answer.
it can happen later in the week,
Yeah, no,
next
I can
week.
certainly get it for you, but I
No.
think, if you're talking this year, I think we are being conservative in choosing 4% for the next 12 months, because I think we're earning about 4.5% now on our balances,
So what's that difference for 0.5%?
0.5%.
You don't have to be on the spot.
Oh, no, it's about $200,000, I'd say, about 200 grand.
So that
So
would
if
cut.
we upped the 4% to 4.5% in our model, or, I'm sorry, in your budget assumptions, we probably earn an additional 200 grand.
So if we left that 250 in other revenue, like I called the data account, because we went back and
I
forth
think-
on that last
Yeah, I
year,
think you could,
that would be safe.
I believe so. I do believe so.
So
basically hearing this then, and Marcia, you're back, is we're pretty set on the revenue side of this then. There's not a lot of movement we can do anywhere.
I don't think so. I think that, I don't think it would be responsible to play too much with these numbers, because we've got a few years that we still have to cover, so we've got to look at that 10-year plan. And I don't see us having a lot of extra money in that 10-year plan. That interest income, it might be higher, that, but again, we would have to treat anything we do with this, including what we've got here, as partially one-year revenue, or one-time revenue, or two-time revenue.
So in my opinion, the only variable number is that 250 in other revenue that we can move around a little bit. We can move it down to 200, or possibly consider moving it up a little bit. I don't think moving it up is a solution either. I think right now, I think we're set on the revenue side. I don't think there's a lot we can do on this revenue side. I think these numbers, so, Mary, I mean, just listening, what do you think? Do we set this up pretty now and say Marcia's pretty in agreement, we don't really look at the, this is pretty set right now.
It looks pretty set.
Eileen? Brianna? Ryan, your thoughts?
What is, so she's going through the interest projections.
Right.
I just want to see what.
I mean, right now, if you, like I was saying, if you chose to add in 4.5% instead of 4% for 12 months, it's gonna be, about 200, 240 additional interest income. And and even 4.5 is being conservative.
That's the best source for the other.
But that's the source for the other,
That's the
right?
best
Dan,
source for the
that keeps us, and then
There's
anything
no
we
sense.
get gives us a little bit of flexibility. We've always, as a group, I think, edged on the conservative side a little bit, because we've tried to control the expense side instead of moving the revenue. Past regimes, they moved the revenue and we never caught up to it.
I feel like revenue is that thing that you can't really trust.
Right, we're
That's
under.
less the fee.
Yeah, you can't trust it and you can't control it, but expenses you can.
Look, the cash flow.
You're like, yeah.
168, that's less the fees, I didn't
Pay more taxes.
I'm gonna give you this, give you that.
So John, what do you think? I mean, leave it at where it's at and
I
then
do.
put the 250 in the other income
Well,
line?
So Marcia actually has a good point. By subtracting out the fees, I didn't net the fees, I had the gross without the fees, so 168 makes sense. Not 250. I mean, my 250.
Right, but we catch that as a catch-all for extra like town clerk revenue,
Yeah.
building permit revenue.
Oh, generally
I
speaking.
told you yesterday, stretch the payables. Just-
Didn't say that.
I did,
I
I'm
didn't
serious.
So with this 168 and the possibility of building permits going up or the possibility of something else, we'll probably achieve that 250 mark. We're all in agreement with that. Marcia, you in agreement with that?
Yeah, I can't hear John, mostly again, I can only hear you. That, but just looking at if we moved it to 4.5 instead of 4, it would be an extra 168,000
Yeah, that's what-
in
yeah,
revenue.
yeah, we covered
That's what
that.
John said.
Which would be part of that 250.
Yeah.
But that would make you comfortable with that 250.
Yes.
Okay, so I think
Right.
we're set on
I
revenue.
think you're good.
I think revenue's pretty much done, right? Unless
Yeah.
we gotta tweak it at the end.
I wanna study this CNR a little more, but I think we're good.
Yeah.
So, that's 100,000, right? So there's 100,000 we have to get somewhere else. Have we seen that over the last
Oh, yeah.
couple of years? We have, okay, all right, I'm good then.
Yeah, we've seen it every year.
Because I do think building permits will decline, but
Yeah.
I wonder, but if you've seen it over several years, then I'm comfortable with that.
I mean, the most we're gonna be chasing with the 168, we're chasing 70, right?
And
Right.
we have,
We're chasing 80.
80.
yeah,
Yeah, so you're chasing 80. So in 80,
And to be honest, that on all the budgets, we have to come in under. And so we're always under on the expenditures, that if for some reason, some year, we were also under 75,000 on the revenue, it shouldn't make a huge difference.
there you go.
yeah. So I figured we'd get that out of the way tonight, since
Yes,
we're all
thank
here and it's closed now, and we don't need to revisit that until end deliberation.
if we gotta make a minor adjustment. So that's a check mark done, Marcia.
All right.
All right, any other questions if you wanna ask of Marcia before we, sign out tonight? Do you wanna have ready for Tuesday?
So Tuesday's agenda is what, I know we're doing Ryan's model.
Tuesday's agenda is we're gonna start with Ryan, all the department heads, sit at the table, we're gonna go over the debt policy quick, so I'll do a quick presentation on just debt policy guidelines,
Yep.
Dan. You know, simple things, I'll ask you to back it up because you've also done research
Yep.
in the past on that. We'll explain to each of the shareholders that, you know, this is our problem, this is what's facing us, how do we work together to meet everybody's needs?
Yep.
I mean, for the police department, I talked to them, and the number I got for a new building is $32 million, is what they said.
That's super good.
What year is the estimate?
2028 start. The estimate was our 2022 estimate, but it was projected to 2028 pricing, and everything else was 35 million to 38 million. I understand that number could change. This came from an architect. This is a blown out number, but it's a big number. So when you, and if you start with that number and you're talking a library, they're talking 15 million hard costs, which is another, whatever, I don't know, in soft costs, you're talking a lot of money.
And maybe a new school, which.
So we need the shareholders to all understand that there's only so much, and how do we work together? What do we need to do? Do we need to change some plans? Do we need to downsize things? I don't have answers. These are just, again, this is just talking off the cuff, but that's part of why we want to show the model, Dan, and say, hey, all of you shareholders have a vested interest. This is what we're facing. Sometimes when people see what the walls are and understand the constraints, you get a more understanding from their sides.
Mhm.
I know everybody has the needs. We all agree that there are needs. So,
It also shows when it fits, right?
Right.
In the time,
Right, and this falls into what you asked Ryan and I to do on the capital committee, which is we can invite all these department heads back and say, okay, so this is what you need and this is where it fits into the schedule, and then we have a better outlook.
To get to the capital plan, we
Right.
get to the model.
And then-
it becomes more of a 10-year plan than a 10-year model
Right.
with the capital committee. It comes
People know where
down
it
to
is.
buying in, and also would helpfully give these organizations or shareholders time to stop fundraise, to get their ducks in a row. Also, if they know what year it can fit, they could prepare themselves properly to meet the timeline going from the backside. If it takes them 4 years to get ready, it'll allow us to plan instead of be reactive. In my opinion, this is where
And
the
if
goal
if
is.
a grant comes across somebody's desk that it makes it worthwhile to push it up, it's something that they can continue to always look at and look for. You never know. The state's gonna come up with.
So that, and then we could go roll right into the departments. We have 2 departments, Dan,
Okay.
Land use,
Is it
Public Works,
three?
and Parks and Rec,
or 3 departments.
Which ones?
Land use.
Public Works and Parks and Rec.
I think, like, I think with the debt thing, I just thought that it would be better to share it all at once with all the
Absolutely, yeah,
departments
we can
instead of doing it every time with each department.
Yep.
Have them all sit together
Yep.
so they can all hear each other's, because I think when other departments come, they have their issues, but other departments don't hear the other issues of the other side, so I think it'll just be
And
I
it
hope.
helps where, how it fits in the capital committee and the board of finance and how we put it together.
yes.
So,
And everybody hears the same thing all at the same
Right.
time.
yeah, and that's very important.
So that's how it's gonna go. Anything else that you wanna talk about quick?
Do
If
you
not, go ahead.
Do you have capital on here for another night? Or is that supposed to be Tuesday's intent? Because tonight you have capital and debt.
Right.
Yeah, we went over capital last night with the presentation that you put together. Marcia went through that, the capital requests. So we will deliberate on that
Right.
another night. So come at the end when we listen to all of the departments' requests. We analyze it. I think our last 3 nights, or we'll go through it and do the final, whatever we feel we think we need to do. So that's where we are right now. I think that's it. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.